Everybody loves loot. Warframe at its core is a looter shooter, and if you play for any significant amount of time, you're going to ask yourself, how can I get more loot for my shoot? You'll probably say it in a slightly more sophisticated manner, but the point still stands. What frame should you pick when loot is the goal? Well, if you're still looking for the answer, look no further, because today I'm going to tell you exactly that. I'm the Kengineer, let's solve a practical problem. I'm going to look at this two ways for you. The first part of this video will look at loot enhancing frames that'll significantly drive up your loot amounts. In the second part, I'll cover a couple alternative options to go with that. I'm going to throw in a quick honourable mention here to Wukong, who is capable of doubling the loot he gets from kills in one very specific circumstance. If Wukong would die, but instead triggers his immortality passive, he has a 1 in 8 chance of getting double loot from kills for a minute. It's absurdly niche and easily goes unnoticed, so that's his passing mention. Right then, looters. There's 4 main loot enhancing frames: Atlas, Nekros, Hydroid and Khora. Each of them have an ability or an augment which gives you more loot from an enemy, and substantially so. Each one works a little differently, making a direct stat comparison a bit tricky, so I instead did some good old manual testing. I ran each frame through the Uranus mission Ophelia for 10 minutes of survival 3 times over, and compiled the resource loot tables. I did 3 runs of 10 minutes rather than one 30-minute run to help smooth out variations in the spawns and tile set. I also only did 3 runs because, after doing this with all the frames and then some group tests, I was frankly losing my will to continue. Of course, no scientific approach is ever complete without a control group, for which I used Sarin. This means we can compare the difference in looting between frames designed to loot and a frame designed to just kill everything quickly, as more kills means more loot. First on the board is Atlas, coming in at 1.56 Sarins, using the Orgaze augment. This nifty little augment mod increases the loot enemies drop if they are killed while petrified. It also happens to scan into the codex every petrified enemy, so I've now got every enemy to be found in the first 10 minutes of Ophelia scanned into there, which is nice. The drop enhancement starts at 25%, and it's tied directly to strength. So for that purpose, I found a high strength with moderate efficiency and range build was really the way to go. Now I will point out Atlas did have quite the variety in his looting, getting around 2.5 times as much loot on one run compared to another, so his actual number of Sarins may be different. But overall, I can say there was an uptick in loot, and it's also quite satisfying to play. Next then, we have Nekros using Desecrate, who clocked in at 1.37 Sarins. This ability turns corpses into extra loot, giving an innate and unchangeable 54% chance to drop loot as if the enemy was killed again. This ability works extra well using the Despoil augment, making it drain health rather than energy. This is great as Nekros is almost never short for health. The ability doesn't rely on strength at all, so you can dump that when using a pure looting build. And the ability works as a set and forget aura, meaning you just passively re-loot the area around you as you go. I suspect the reason he's coming in at 1.37 rather than 1.54 Sarins is due to the difference in kill speed. Do note that in some older guides you will be told that Nekros can loot a corpse multiple times because it splits into pieces. This no longer works. Sad times, I know. Hydroid is our third loot frame, using his Tentacle Swarm augmented with Pilfering Swarm, clocking in at 1.70 Sarins. This is no surprise, as Pilfering Swarm has a fixed 100% chance to drop extra loot from an enemy that died while being grappled by a tentacle. Even if the enemy dies to friendly fire somehow, it still counts. Hydroid is a lot more passive in his looting strategy, as you ideally want to wait for the enemies to enter the loot zone before killing them. And it's easier at that point to just let the tentacles do the job. Killing things yourself can lead to accidentally killing unrestrained enemies, hurting the loot volume. Make sure to tactically use your hold to cast to cover the area of your choke point with as little room for gaps as possible. Also, the tentacles prefer to spawn under enemies, so you can use this to cluster tentacles where enemies come from by casting it while they're pathing through your kill box. Duration is key to making this work, and you can probably get away without focusing efficiency. Just scale your strength and range to your chosen mission. And lastly of the main looters, we've got Khora, using her Strangle Dome ability with the Pilfering Dome augment. She achieves 1.39 Sarins. Pilfering Dome is less efficient than Pilfering Swarm, due to only a 65% double drop chance for enemies caught in the domes. But it's also easier to use, as 2 domes can be placed versus 1 tentacle swarm. And with that, the domes are more forgiving in how they grab enemies. Honestly, I'm surprised you only managed 1.39 Sarins, but this could be down to the spawns I had. Still, a loot improvement, and also you get a free kitty. You can set Venari into heal mode and cast it on yourself if you don't want Venari running off causing havoc. Just like with Hydroid, duration is key, though efficiency may be more important on Khora than it is on Hydroid in my experience. So that's the main frames for looting purposes from a solo run perspective. For you lovely people who like figures as much as I do, here's the raw data for the tests I did. Now an important note here is, as I said, I ran all those tests solo. The only frames which don't work together are Hydroid and Khora. Everyone else's looting ability stacks with the rest, so long as you can actually get all of them to trigger. To do a comparison, I recruited some people from the Moonlight Bliss clan, the verified nuker Danny HW, Pigment Maestro Beardface, and the Excalibro Tomato Toe. Try saying that one drunk. We did 2 sets of 2 runs, that's 2 missions with the best damage we could bring, and 2 missions with the best loot squad we could bring. The kill squad netted me 2.01 Sarins of loot, while the loot squad obtained 3.74 Sarins of loot, an 87% increase. The simple takeaway here being that if you want to get more loot straight away, get a squad. Then, loot the squad. Again, for my fellow stat nerds, the numbers. I've blagged on a bit about loot enhancers, but there's a couple more frames you'll want to consider for looting purposes. Limbo is a great choice for looting a level rather than the enemies themselves. His Cataclysm ability will destroy any loot crate in a wide area, which can also be cast at range and through walls, giving you a grand ability to open up most resourced options nearby, excluding lockers. If you pair this with a very high loot radar and the ever mandatory vacuum mod on your companion, this allows you to hunt down every resource spot on the minimap with ease, even finding some more unconventional locations, if you keep an eye out and jump creatively. Adding to the benefits, this strategy then leaves behind very critical loot elements on the minimap. If you cast your Cataclysm and one of the resource icons doesn't vanish, blink or move, it means it is a non-destructible pickup or already a resource on the floor. This is great for finding resource caches in Sabotage, Syndicate medallions in Syndicate missions, and loot like Iron Sculptures. Other frames can do this role too, like Equinox with her main, but Limbo is by far the most easy to use frame for it I've found. The downside being you trade out most offensive capability to do it. So bring a friend, or accept you are focusing on world loot. And lastly, Ivara, using her Prowl ability, can obtain extra loot by pickpocketing enemies. It's 100% at base, but it's tied to strength only into the negatives, meaning a lower strength hurts you, but a higher strength doesn't actually help you out. This isn't a very good looting strategy, but it does meet the basic criteria, and she can be useful if you need to loot a specific rare enemy by getting that extra loot chance before you kill it. Really though, the main use for this ability is to cause enemies to drop energy orbs so you can keep the Prowl ability running. So there we have it then folks. If you want to loot, the best option is to grab a squad, form up using Nekros, Atlas, Limbo, and your choice of Khora or Hydroid. If you're running solo, then it more depends on how you want to play. But as demonstrated with Ivara, sometimes it's just a numbers game, and more kills will beat some gimmicky playout. If you learned something today, give the video a like, and if you want to see more, why not subscribe while you're at it? If you're already subscribed, you're awesome, and thank you very much for your continuing support. Once again, a shout out to the great people of Moonlight Bliss for helping me out on this one. And as always, loot more, farm tons, and fight well, Tenno. And now a clip from the group test which went, awry.
What do you mean? Where?
Your aura.
My aura?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Equinox has
Like
an
my
aura. Has 4 as an aura. Normally it just kind of squigglifies the surfaces around you. Yours isn't squigglifying it. It's like Vorben just shot 50 Basto balls out of wings.
It's kind of like imagine 1,000 light bulbs all in the same room, about 32,000 lumens each.
I mean, for me, it just looks totally normal. But...
I'm sure it does.
Let me check it.
I want to take a picture, but far away from you guys.
Oh my!
Yeah, you see it as well.
That's my tactic then. I'll distract them.